we are going to segue and I get to introduce you to Ben and his incredible workshop, which is a community strategy workshop. So we are now entering a different type of session. This is active. We're going to be thinking. We have 60 minutes in total, and we are basically going to be saying goodbye to funnels because we are climbing mountains. Ben and I have had the pleasure of connecting all the way from Sydney when we first met years ago at the first ever meetup for the Community Collective, which is very exciting. And Ben is now the community leader at MYOB, and he's also an advisor at the Community Collective. He has been helping me and the team and the entire CC community grow over the last 3 years because he is a powerhouse. He's been in the community industry since MySpace was a thing and has helped even Canva grow the community, MYOB, Smokeball, and Dovetail. But Ben is an absolute legend, and he is here now to talk to you about a community strategy workshop. So Ben, please take it away. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Paz. It's amazing to be here. And yeah, I've had a little bit of sleep in the last 5 days, but I've been so excited and a little bit nervous to talk to all of these amazing community geniuses here. So I might as well dive in. Is everyone ready?
We're ready, Ben. I'm so excited. I'm going to go grab the popcorn.
Well, all right. My business card says that I'm a community leader, which, you know, sounds like I should be organizing a fete or maybe a cult. But ultimately, I'm a nerd who gets paid to think about why humans like and share things. And I have a confession to make. And that is, even though the whole title of my presentation is Forget Funnels, I actually don't mind funnels. In fact, I kind of love them. They've got these clean lines and they're satisfying metrics and they have this sheer, unadulterated, soul-crushing efficiency. But they're to community what a spreadsheet is to a symphony. And if we just rely on funnels, we might end up killing our community. But to understand why and why funnels fail us, I need to take you on a little bit of a trip. Not into a breakout session, but back in time about 50,000 years ago when our earliest ancestors were just kind of figuring out how to make fire and sharp pointy sticks. This was a long time before KPIs and the word synergy existed, and avocado on toast was a distant dream. And I want to take you back here and ask you a question. What does a saber-toothed tiger and a daycare center have in common? And to illustrate my point, I want to show you this really cool thing that my 4-year-old son and I 3D printed the other day. And this is an actual saber-toothed tiger skull. This is how big they were. They're like, oh my God, that does not look friendly. And so I printed him partly because my son's obsessed with them and I think they're really cool, and partly because he was really curious to know if it could eat his brother. But ultimately, if you look at these things, they're kind of terrifying. They're daggers wrapped in enamel, and they're nature's perfect killing machine, an apex predator. But they're also gone. And yet we're still here. We've both been around about as long as each other. But we're here in climate-controlled rooms to fix the climate that we broke and complaining about the Wi-Fi, which sounds a bit ridiculous when you think about it. Those smilodons, saber-toothed tigers, were busy chasing down us within a few months of being born. And yet we as humans are born about 9 months too early. And we are helpless, loud, leaky, self-soiling potatoes for the first few years of our life. We're born with a head so big we can't even lift it. And to apologize for that, as if to apologize for the inconvenience we'll give to our parents for the next 18 years. Beyond that, it takes 13 million calories to raise one of our children, about 23,000 Big Macs. We're really inefficient. We're really high maintenance. We're really vulnerable as individuals, as a species. And yet we're here. We've invented things like AI, whereas the scarier animals we grew up around as a species are now fossils. And the thing that makes us different is that we have a couple of really utterly bizarre, evolutionarily wild superpowers. One of them is that we panic organize. When things hit the fan, we don't just run, we start to form committees. And we also give our babies to strangers, what scientists call alloparenting, which is also a bit crazy if you think about it. It's kind of like saying, hey, Sharon from down the road, I know I've only met you twice, but please keep my entire genetic legacy alive for 8 hours while I go and put numbers in a spreadsheet. Now, the saber-tooth would have eaten Sharon, but we've built an entire species, an entire economy, an entire society around not eating Sharon. And so this instinct, this Sharon trusting, committee forming instinct is deeply ingrained into our DNA. Ability to build communities and be parts of communities is something we don't even notice because it's so innate. It's like breathing to us. We just do it, which is beautiful and poetic. But it also makes me realize that most of the experts in this room are pretending to be professionals at it. We're professional breathers, essentially. We have job titles and salaries and PowerPoints about breathing, and we're trying to manage this ancient primal life-saving instinct with a funnel. But funnels are still cool. They're still brilliant, especially if you're selling steak knives or a subscription to a service that tells you which celebrity your dog looks like. For these things, funnels are gold. They're a beautiful, logical machine for turning people with wallets full of money into people with wallets full of less money. You put more ads in at the top and you get more cash out the bottom. It's elegant and it's amazing if it works. And if that's your business, then, well, the rest of this presentation isn't for you. You don't need community. There's probably a great webinar to the left or the right on growth hacking or performance marketing that you could go to. But if you want to create something more, if you want your members to be your research and development department, your support team, your marketing agency, all at once, well, it's hard to build a funnel for that. No amount of ad spend will make a customer care enough. You can buy this, of course. They're called employees, but they're pretty expensive. And you can also buy communities too. Facebook bought WhatsApp's users for about $19 billion. But there's another way to do it. And a great example of this is GitHub, who single-handedly convinced a global community of wonderful nerds like myself to build $1 billion a year cathedral of code that powers the internet, tech, AI, and everything else that we're talking to and listening to each other on. And they did it for free, for bragging rights, for a sense of belonging. So which business are you in? Checkbook business, or what David Spinks, who was on a bit earlier, calls the business of belonging? So if you're still here, it's because you need something more than funnels. You need to help people get to this weird, obsessive, beautiful place of co-creating with you. And this is the first part of my presentation that will give your head of growth a headache. Because to do this, to get co-creation, you have to make it harder. You have to add friction. And I know this is heresy, but it's true. Studies of communes back in the day where people grouped up and participated in things based on faith or belief or things like that. Well, we did some research on that and we found that the most ridiculous, costly, annoying membership requirements lasted 4 times as long as the ones that were just easy to show up to. We call this costly signaling, and it's the psychological equivalent of a peacock's tail. It says, I'm committed to this. I'm willing to do this ridiculous, difficult thing to prove that. In most of our communities, it's not about buying your way into the club. It's about earning your way in. So with that being said, I don't want you to take your beautiful, elegant, efficient funnels and set them on fire. If you've got something like this, or if you're new to the concept of funnels and these frameworks, then yeah, don't get rid of it. Today, we're going to move a bit beyond these processes and moving people through something to looking at the people themselves. And we're going to stop looking for the path of least resistance. Instead, we're going to build a mountain that we're going to ask our members to climb and help climb with them. So let's do it. I think it's time to climb. I don't want to pontificate anymore because philosophy is great, but it doesn't get your budget approved. So now we're going to get into some effort. For the next 30 minutes, we're going to climb this mountain together. If you have a piece of paper, a pen, a notes app, a napkin, or you're just really good at remembering stuff, I don't really mind, but I'd like you to get something out so that you can help write your first draft of your very own Mount commitment. And we're going to map the journey our members are on right now. Even if what I'm talking about and what the summit of this mountain is still a complete mystery. Even if parts of the trail are missing. Even if you thought you just had an audience, or you thought your community was great, and by the end of this call, you're having a mild panic attack, realizing that there's a few gaps that you need to plug. That's fine. We're all friends here, and we're here to help. So this is the mountain. And really, it covers the 4-part journey that every member of every community goes through or tries to go through. First, there's the ocean of ignorance or opportunity, where billions of people have no idea you or your community exist and also don't care. And then, if we get it right, we build a bridge to the foothills. This is the land of free tote bags, swag, email sign-up forms, and event registration pages. And a lot of funnels die happy here. And this is why we need something more than a funnel. Next is the climb. This is where the tourists and the curious members go home and the altitude sickness starts to kick in. It's where real commitment is forged and where sense of community grows. And finally, you have the summit. But it's not just a peak that people visit. It's a place where our strongest, most committed, most engaged members reside. They live up there. They carve new paths for new members and occasionally shout cryptic advice to the climbers below. They've gone from being members to architects, helping you decide and define the future of the community and taking it in weirder, more wonderful, and often lucrative directions than you or your entire business can on your own. So we're going to figure out how to help as many members as possible make it to the top, to that summit. And in doing so, we're going to focus not just on where people get to, the stages themselves, because this doesn't matter as much as movement. Rather than looking at super user counts, unique visits, or vanity metrics, which are all kind of a photograph of a single moment, we're going to try and create more of a time lapse with the way we think about and track our members' movement. Because ultimately, we don't need a dashboard and we don't need metrics that look great that don't tell us much. We have to uncover how people are climbing and what's helping and hindering them on that journey. So before we even get to the mountain, let's have a look at the ocean of opportunity. We have to talk about this place, which is vast, cold, and deeply misunderstood, because any community any mountain of commitment and engagement is just the tip of an iceberg sticking out of this ocean. Ultimately, 95% of your potential members, your potential target market, if you're more of a funnel builder than a marketer, are in this ocean right now and will remain that way. They're not just not yet members, they're functionally, profoundly, and completely oblivious to your existence. Why? Well, there's a lot of reasons, but part of it is the pesky anthropological speed limit that we call Dunbar's number. And that is that we've evolved to maintain about 150 stable relationships. And you, your brand, your community, or your cause, you're just not one of those 150. So your first challenge isn't to be liked or trusted or even understood. Your first challenge is just to exist in their world. But this ocean isn't a soup of ignorance. There's layers. There's variation. And so we have to explore it and understand the people who are swimming in it and who we can connect to, who's ready. But I guess the first group is the unaware. This is the silent majority of people who need what you have, but don't know you exist. They're using a rusty spanner when you've invented the electric impact driver. Their problem's real, but your solution to them is imaginary. They're your total addressable market or total addressable membership, and they are a ghost to you, and you are to them. The next are the searching, and these are people who are awake to a pain, an inconvenience, or a need that your community can meet. They know their rusty spanner isn't working, and they're actively trying to fix the problem, but they're using substitute solutions that don't quite get things right. They're using blue tack, duct tape, and sticky tape. They're using a fix from YouTube tutorials, random blog posts, a confusing book, or a piece of software that only does half the job. And this constant low-grade or high-grade dissatisfaction is kind of a bat signal to us that they are our prime target because they're ready to move. They need to change the way things are, and you can help them do that. The next group are the lost. These are the people who have joined and left your community from the past. They are your ghosts. They're former members who joined, maybe posted once, and then drifted away. And what they are is evidence of the leaks in your ship, the broken rungs in your ladder, the holes in your journey to true membership and engagement. They kind of hurt to look at and talk to, but they hold valuable lessons about where your climb up the mountain is a bit treacherous. And the last are the sleeping. They're people who don't know what they don't know. They don't realize they have a need. They're not lonely because they've just accepted that loneliness is the norm, or they've normalized the pain or discomfort. They just think the way things are is the way things are. Because they're not searching, because they don't have a discomfort or a thing driving change, they don't know there's anything needed to fix. And until that happens, well, they're not going to wake up. You need a catalyst to wake them up. And then they become searchers. So we don't have to boil the ocean here. We just have to know it and what we can use from here to begin our strategy and build our community. Because if we can become the most compelling, obvious answer to those who are searching, and if we can learn from listening to the ghosts of the lost, then we can start to build a bridge from this big ocean of opportunity and potential members to our little community. So get the pencils out, get the notes out, because we're going to do some little basic kind of recon missions and experiments to get to know who's out there in the unaware ocean. And we're going to focus on those two groups, the searchers and the lost, because they're going to give us stuff that we can action quickly. So first, let's search for the searching. Right now, they're probably hanging out with the competition. And your job is to become a bit of a digital anthropologist. Wow, it's a hard one to say. And to go exploring the jungle that is Google. If you can answer the following questions, this will help you get an idea of what they're searching for and what they're finding already, and how you can position yourself amongst those spaces to become a better solution than the ones that are available. So first we have to ask, what would Google do? Because communities are not just built around connection. They're built around solving a problem, especially when people first join. So we need to think about, with our target members, what are they searching for? What are they typing into Google at 11 p.m. when they're awake worrying or wondering what could be different? Have a guess. You won't get it right, but you could ask your members and they could help you. And then type that in and you'll see the substitute solutions, the alternative options that they have out there. Look at the top results, not the top results that are probably just paid search ads, but the real ones that show up because they're getting high traffic, because people are engaging with them, because people are clicking through and Google thinks they're relevant. Often it's a Reddit result, and there's more about why that's the case later. These, though, are the substitute solutions that our searching are using. Your first thing in your little notebook is to just write down, what are those first results? Is it a blog? Is it a YouTube channel, a software tool, a book, or a couple of things? Or is it another community? And then go digging and figure out what's missing. Because there will be something. Because if nothing's missing, then they're not searching. So there's generally something, some way you can meet a need that's not met by the substitutes and alternatives that are out there. It's a niche inside a niche that you can cater to, or it's creating more human connection in a space that is mostly blogs, articles, and YouTube channels. Or perhaps it's going local when everyone else is trying to go global. Next is we have to start learning from the people that we've already lost. We have to do a bit of a seance and bring them back from the dead and find out what happened to the members who came, saw, and promptly left. We need to understand, what was it, the promise we broke? What were they looking for that we couldn't give them? What got them onto the shore from a search engine, a site, a friend's referral, or from inside your app? Was it a promising free template, a warm referral from a friend, or something else? And then what caused them to slip up? Not what was the first thing they did, not what was their goal, but what was the first thing they failed to do? What was the first brick wall that they ran into that caused them to give up and make them nothing more than a unique visit? Did they get stuck in a sign up or login page that blocked the view of all of the amazing things behind that wall? And finally, we need to think about the unfinished business there, because if you believe in ghosts, then, I know, but the law says that the haunting happens because of unfinished business, something that spirit was so desperate to do in life that it's helplessly haunting in death. Bit morbid, but we need to figure out, what was it they ultimately wanted? What were they thinking they were going to get that didn't get? Was it an answer to a question? What happened? And if we can understand that, then we can make sure that that's more obvious and apparent later. And based on those three things, we'll have a few handy actions that we can take to start to dial in our first steps onto Mount Commitment. By spying on the searching, we can discover how we can position, where to show up, what to say, and the kinds of value and meaning that we need to communicate to help members just get in the door and have those next experiences. And by listening to the lost, you can understand where they fell over, where they failed, where they got stuck. Now, this is the foundation, and it gets us onto the mountain, onto the foothills. And to understand the foothills, we have to get out of our marketing brains and become psychologists for a moment. The journey a potential member takes isn't a linear funnel. It's this high stakes, internal, psychological drama in 3 acts. The first act is all about identity. The social psychologist Henry Tajfel's work on social identical theory is pretty critical here. And you can find out how to get the references to some of these resources at the end of this chat. But the moment someone encounters your community, they begin this rapid, completely unconscious calculation. Are these my people? What does joining this group say about who I am? It's an instant, instinctual tribal assessment. And this complex identity negotiation boils down to one simple practical question. What does this community do for me? And if your community passes that test, then they begin to think about the risk and consequences. Daniel Kahneman from the book Thinking Fast and Slow talks about the concept of loss aversion here. And this starts to take over as a member starts to weigh the perceived cost of joining, their time, their reputation, and their email address against the promise that you're offering of what it will do. This boils down to a question. Is it worth it? Will I get more out than I put in? And if they decide that it is worth it, then now the search for safety begins. Amy Edmondson talks about the concept of psychological safety and has conducted some great research on this. And really, she talks about how anyone to a new group, a new community, a new workplace, or anything else feels exposed. And they will be looking for social cues that tell them it's safe to be here, safe to participate, safe to be themselves. And this need is really expressed in one final crucial question. Am I welcome here? So let's figure out what answers we're giving with some quick. First is the 5-second challenge. This answers that question of what does this do to me? If you go to your community's landing page, start a timer for 5 seconds as you click the link. Can you find one sentence, graphic, or something else that clearly states the value you're giving? What's in it for them, for that new member? If you have to hunt for it, if it's not obvious in those 5 seconds, then you're stuck. If it's there, write it down in your little notebook. If it's not, start to think about what you could include and where to make that what's in it for me. Is this worth it? Clear. The next is your hassle to sizzle ratio. Now, I have to probably explain what that is, but definitely in Australia, at least, we talk about selling the sizzle, not the sausage, i.e. the joy, the fun, the deliciousness of the meal, not just what it is itself. And so here we need to make sure that people get to that benefit, that experience, that thing that shows that it's worth it as quickly as possible. But what gets in the way of that is hassle. It's logins, it's registrations, it's paywalls, or it's just difficulty finding the answer to a question they might have. So what we need to do here is count from that front page of the community or from one of those search results where our searches are generally coming in for, how many clicks, fields, email steps, scrolls, or things like that are in between that member's first visit and their first experience of something valuable that helps them see that this is worth it. Ideally, we need to get that ratio down to 0, i.e. there is no hassle. And one of my favorite examples of this and why Reddit is probably so successful is because most of us end up deep in a subreddit with exactly the question we were going to ask answered extremely well, straight from Google search. We get all of the sizzle without any of the hassle. We're not asked to sign up until much later. But for now, write down how many clicks, how many barriers, how many annoying fiddly things do you have to do to go from discovering the community to discovering and experiencing the value. And finally, we have time to dopamine, because we need both. Dopamine is the reward you feel when you find an answer or get a good thing, you win a game, whatever it is. And oxytocin is the warmth you feel when you get human connection. It's why hugs feel great. And in the community, knowing how instinctual and deep this is in our nature, you have to help your members experience both fast. How long does it take for a new member to get their first genuine human interaction that proves they belong and gives them a little hit of dopamine and a little bit of oxytocin? This is a reply, a nice one, a welcome reaction, or something like that. How long does it take for that to happen? Or is it a deafening silence that lasts days, weeks, or forever? Have a look at how long it takes for people to be welcomed in some way on average and write down that time. The goal is always to get that a little bit lower. But all of this mapping is great. But ultimately, though, the most successful, powerful, elite communities and platforms do something quite radical here. They solve all of those three problems. They give the members all of the things they need to know that this is a place they can participate in, that will do what they need, give them value, give them benefits and safety. They do it all at once. They don't have funnels. They don't have steps. They have a welcome mat made of pure value. Again, going back to Reddit, this is why that moment of discovery, the way they set things up in search and things like that is so incredible, because your moment of discovery is also your moment of activation in a Reddit. You don't land on a homepage. You land on a great answer to a question you just Googled. So you get the sizzle before the hassle, you get the dopamine and the solution all as your first touch point. You feel welcome because you're immediately in the right place, solving the exact problem you had and upvoting and downvoting or trying to make a wisecrack in the comments and subreddit. So the ultimate goal in the Foothill is not to perfect three separate steps. It's to make it all happen and collapse it down into that first step. From there, we move to the climb. And if the journey through the Foothills was about answering that key question, what's in it for me, then when the member arrives here, it's about the shift from a personal journey to a shared mission. It's where the driving question changes from what's in it for me to what's in it for us. And this is how users who have found value here become leaders and participants and contributors who create value for the next members before them. And here we have three stages that will look familiar because they are part of a funnel, but we've got a richer, fuller, more useful definition for community here. So at retention, it's not about a member simply not leaving. It's the stage where your community evolves from a product or place they use to answer questions and meet needs to more of a third place in their life, somewhere between home, our first place, work, our second place. It's this essential third space they go to connect, create, simply be in a way that matters to them. And so to do this, to transform people from transactional to ongoing participants who come back and contribute, we need to have the consistency of habits and the meaning of rituals. This is the weekly check-ins, the annual gatherings, the inside jokes and coffee chats and side WhatsApp groups. These are all modern ceremonies that create psychological sense of community from Macmillan and Chavis. Again, I can have a link to that reference a bit later. It's that feeling that you truly belong and matter to the group and vice versa. And this is where that concept of Dunbar's number becomes critical again. The goal isn't to limit your community to that 150 people that each of us can generally have a deep relationship with. It's to create a village in your community that's large enough and vibrant enough that every member can find their little clique of 4 or 5 besties who will occupy a precious few of that total 150 meaningful relationship slots that they have. Because nobody has all their friends in one place. But for retention to really lock in, their core group from your community must be active there. They have to have some mates. Even if you may not see this in the community itself, a lot of this will move to private DMs and things like that. But ultimately, this is the thing that is going to turn your community to that safe space, a place to test ideas, a place to be vulnerable and to build identity. And when you get this right, retention isn't a metric. It's a testament that you've built a vital part of someone's life. So then we shift from me to we with revenue. Because once a member feels safe in that village, the human drive shifts from seeking security to seeking significance. And this is the great transition from me to we, the pivot from a consumer of culture and community to a co-creator of it. And so the shift is driven by a pretty powerful psychological sequence. It begins with reciprocity. Man, I can't pronounce that. Reciprocity. And this is that innate need to give back to a village or people that shelter you. And in doing so, you deepen that psychological ownership. It's no longer your community, but our community. And a really powerful signal of this that we often misinterpret is when we have members who are frustrated, cross, making cranky threads or saying not very nice things when something is broken with the app or the community or the space. And while we need to manage that well with effective moderation, this should be seen as the passionate cry of a co-owner rather than the silence of a detached customer. So it is a good signal, even if it's one we have to manage. Here, participation is fueled by a thing called the helper's high. And your role here is not to exploit this energy, but to be open to it and to connect clearly to what your members really want to do and to work with that to strengthen the entire collective and the entire growth of the community. And finally, at Referral, we have really the rise of the true believer. And this is where your members become evangelists, if not for your brand or cause, then the community that your brand or cause supports. And it's underpinned by a really interesting shift in social dynamics. Because for most of our lives, recommending something is an act of risking our social capital, our reputation. But when a community has become a core part of your identity, that starts to flip. And now recommendation becomes the single best way to build social capital and reputation. So the first step is getting our members to there. And when we do, we need to make sure that it doesn't just feel like sharing a link when they're talking about the community, but rather that they're giving a gift. Because ultimately, they're offering access to the village that gives them safety and the mission that gives them purpose. The true believer evangelizes both the place. This is a space that will shelter you and that is fun, as well as the purpose. This is a cause that will ignite you. And in this final stage, the members' personal status and the collective community strength become intertwined. So another big part of wishy-washy psychology, how do we apply it? Well, we need to look at the vital signs of that inner village of active, connected, contributing members who are creating the content that new members and everyone else participates in, who are moving the needle on your company's revenue by saving you money or making you money with the ways that they participate. That little village has vital signs like any other living things. So we need to do some triage and we need to answer some research-backed questions to figure out if our village has a pulse, a purpose, and a point. So first, we need to find that heartbeat. And this is really just testing for and seeing if we have rituals and if they're working. Because human connection is forged in those rhythms and those cycles. Charles Duhigg talks about the power of habit, and that habits are a loop, a cue, a routine, and a reward. And so a healthy community ritual is something that is a rewarding habit loop. And a dying community is a list of activities that end up being a forgotten to-do list for our members. So the main question here is, do we have rituals, habits, regular things that we can do that are predictable, that have a cue to remind our members to participate, a simple routine or action that they can take, and a reward of social interaction, recognition, or something else that ties into the what's in it for me for our members. What helps here is to have a consistent time and place, a regular routine or way of contributing that has joy, connection, laughter, and insight, something learned, because that can be a powerful reward. And what hinders here is those unpredictable events that don't happen all the time, or a high effort process to join, or a boring, pointless meeting that ends with a sigh of relief when it's over. Hopefully not me. Next to that is asks and tasks. And this is how people contribute to the growth of your community, the growth of your cause, the growth of your brand. Here, people crave three things when they're in any community or any part of their life: autonomy, a sense of competence, and relatedness. And this shifts people from me to we when we give them these things, because they believe contributing to the group will satisfy their need to be skilled and in control. This is the IKEA effect, which is that we love what we help to build. And the question here is, does contributing grant that feeling of autonomy and competence, or does it feel like a bureaucratic nightmare? Finally, signaling theory shows that every recommendation we make is a signal about our own taste, status, and identity. So when a member tells a friend about your community, they're either spending that social capital or investing in it. And you can decide and influence which. You have to answer the question, does sharing this community make out my members look generous, like high status geniuses, or kind of like weirdos in a cult? If it's the latter, well, it's not going to work too well, is it? What helps here is crisp one-liners that help you describe the community in terms of that what's in it for me, with a slick, simple invite process that makes the member look good, and some kind of fantastic and onboarding that for their friend, so that we validate that recommendation with proof as quickly as possible. On to reinvestment, the peak, the final bit, and probably a new concept for most of us. But first, we have to understand the difference between a passionate fan club-like community and a self-sustaining global movement that's far bigger than the brand or the cause that set it off. And the answer here is a single, terrifying, risky, and transformative idea of reinvestment. And to be clear, this is the final stage. This is the summit, but not everybody's ready to reach this. But this is the only true path to true global scale if you need a community that big, and if you can achieve it. Ultimately, for most of a community's life, we're focused on what I call the revenue stage. And this in of itself is great. We can stop here because it's where your members care enough to help you. They answer questions in your forum. They give feedback on your roadmap. They help you make your thing better. But you're essentially renting their passion, even if that's fantastic. At Reinvestment, we're at the top, and it's the moment you stop renting out the space and hand over the keys to the castle. It's a deliberate transfer of power, of real status, of real raw resources from you, the company, the business, to them, your most trusted members of the community. You stop seeing them as your most helpful users and start seeing them as future leaders and architects of the community itself. And why is this important? Because a company and the employees that manage the community will eventually become a bottleneck. At true scale, a team of employees can only go so far and see so much of the true landscape that their community members are living in every day. But a distributed network of trusted leaders, they can see everything, and you can scale that to the moon. And this is not just theory. It's the engine that powers giant spaces like Wikipedia, and it's the core revenue model behind Reddit. Looking at the Wikipedia example, it doesn't scale because of employees. It scales because there's a few hundred volunteer leaders who are more than super users. They have been granted the power to delete pages, block vandals, and mediate the giant disputes that go on behind each page on Wikipedia. They're the architects and guardians of much of the world's knowledge, and what got me through uni and this presentation. Reddit, another great example. They don't just create communities or moderate the content. They built a platform and then did something pretty wild at the time. They just handed over the keys to everyone else. They empower volunteer mods to become leaders with the tools and the authority to build, manage, and grow their own subreddits to hundreds of thousands of people and millions of views. And so the mods create the value, and Reddit can build a billion-dollar company on the back of that trust. So that's the wild potential, but it comes with some downsides. Rather than measuring and auditing, here's how to try it if you're ready. The first thing is we have to write the Constitution, because ultimately handing over leadership, handing over power, crowning kings and queens you need to have laws. You need to have some rules. You have to build the scaffolding that makes leadership both powerful and safe, because that protects your community from bad leaders, and it protects your leaders from ambiguity and uncertainty. The Constitution that you write has to be public, and it should include these three things, if by any other name. The first is the laws of the land, the core principles that apply to everyone who participates in this community, including you and the brand that you represent. You need a council of peers, a structure for sharing the power so that you don't have single leaders that can accidentally become tyrants. And you need a path for impeachment and retirement, a clear, transparent process for removing a leader who abuses their trust or who just isn't up for it anymore. Step 2 is to find or make those leaders. And here we do not want to look for our loudest fans or the squeakiest wheels. Instead, you need to look for your quietest, most competent gardeners, because our brains are hardwired to trust two signals above all others, competence and generosity. And our gardeners have this much more than our influencers. So find them by looking for people already leading without the title. The ones who are mentoring newbies, calming arguments, and tidying up messy threads. They're helpers, they're fixers, they're gardeners and natural shepherds. You can make them into leaders by seeing the potential there and helping them take that spark of confidence and build confidence on top of it. Mentor them, encourage them, give them something small and safe to try first, and then fan that spark into a flame. And then crowd them. This is not an email notification. It's a true coronation, and it must be public. You need to signal to your entire tribe that this person is trusted. You need to give them a crown, which is the symbol, some kind of visible status, a unique badge, a special title, a seat in the private leaders channel that tells everyone else this person matters. And you need to give them real power, real authority. The keys to moderate a channel or a whole subreddit, the budget to run an event, the final say on how and where and why a community project is delivered even. Because the crown is nothing without the power behind it. Finally, we have to invest or reinvest in them, knowing that we've already built relationships along the way. Because the coronation is the beginning of the partnership. You've moved from delegating and asking to developing someone who can decide what to do next with you. So now you have to invest in them and work with them like one. You've got to give them that direct line. You've got to have regular check-ins. You've got to be their mentor and their champion. You have to reinvest your resources. Give them that budget and everything else that I've already talked about. If you do all this, if you let them truly own their corner of the kingdom, then you get this final terrifying opportunity to turn the passion and skill and engagement that they have as a real member into that final massive scale. So the last sections are really just about some ways to track and measure this. And I'm only going to touch on them lightly, but I've got a big cheat sheet at the end that you can either DM me on LinkedIn to get, or I'm sure we can get it in the copy of the slide deck as well. But we don't need to measure every stage. We don't need to measure everything granularly and perfectly, but we do need to consider these 5 areas of impact and keep. So the first is your footprint. How much of the ocean do you occupy? You might have a target addressable membership of 1 billion members, in which case, if you have 10,000, well, you've got some growing to do. But if there's only 10,000 people who are ever going to be interested in what you do and the purpose of your community, then 10,000 members is great. You're saturated. You've reached it. The entire ocean is in your foothills or higher. So we need to track that and the ratio between who we could get and how many we do have on the climb. And then we need to look at the sources of growth. Is it search? Is it from the app? Is it from somewhere else? I don't know. But have a look and make sure that you're looking at not just people who show up, but people who show up and keep going up the climb. We need to look at our hug to shrug ratio, both the speed of replies to first-time posters and the quality and sentiment of it. Because remember, if they get that welcoming, oxytocin-rich, dopamine-rich first response, that is a huge part of what is going to help them keep going. And we need to look at our village, the people who are at that revenue retention referral stage on the climb. How many people are coming back and how often? Reddit and many other places use monthly active users to weekly active users, or weekly active users to daily active users. And here we're looking at the ratio between those two. For monthly active to weekly active, a healthy metric is between 30 and 35%. If you have like 10% of people visiting once a month and never coming back, that's something you need to work on. Finally, well, not finally, the next one is runways. And where do new members, returning members, and regulars land in your community? And I can tell you now, it's not going to be the front page. It's going to be particular threads, particular discussions, and particular events. And we need to keep an eye on that because those are the things, those are strong signals about where people are finding what they need to decide that they belong. And finally, we need to figure out our impact. And any impact value should have $1 next to it. And ultimately, everything our members do should eventually connect up to a way that we save money by deflecting support tickets, contributing to product feedbacks or insights or things like that, or to make money, even if it's just by subscribing to be a part of the community. So this is the giant cheat sheet that I will give you a copy of if you DM me or if you get a copy of the slides. But for now, thanks for listening. Feel free to add me on LinkedIn. I've got a notebook LM of all the research and notes and things like that I used to put together this presentation. So I'm happy to share a link to that. I've got the cheat sheet for how to actually create those metrics and track them. And if you need help making this happen, then feel free to ping me and I'm happy to talk about how the Community Collective and I can help you go further, faster with community-led growth. But for now, thank you so much. Thanks for listening.
Hey, Ben, absolutely fantastic. I love climbing mountains. I got my mountain climbing hat on just for you. I was like, this is great. I'm ready. I was like doing the climb, wearing all the hats, being the community builder, all the things.
Yeah.
And Ben, that was just so useful. There were so many different elements, and the chat's been going off. We still have 254 people here live. And Ben, you know, I've got some really exciting news.
Mhm.
We just hit the halfway mark. We're 12 hours into Loop, thanks to you.
Nice.
How good is that?
Halfway up the mountain.
Yeah, halfway up the mountain. So, Ben, it's been absolutely phenomenal. We've got one question here in the chat, which is, what has been the biggest learning that you've had in your community building journey?
Oh my gosh, the biggest. Oh.
Yeah, just a real chill question.
Yeah. It's always about the people. It's always about understanding everything you can from their perspective as much as possible. If you can understand why someone in, I don't know, a gardening community needs to go online to talk about something, what is it that they're really dying to know or dying to talk about? If you have that, then the platform, the analytics, the tools, the frameworks, like all kind of fall into place. But if you really get them and get how they want to connect and what they need, everything else is going to work. If you don't have that, then yeah, you can have the best comms, content, copy, app, and everything else, but yeah, it won't connect. It won't land. You gotta know what they're searching for. Yeah.
Exactly. You heard it here first, everyone. And I am so grateful, Ben, for you sharing all of your knowledge in Loop. And yes, it always is about the people. So please, everyone, post a thank you in the chat and your one takeaway that you've learned from Ben's session. And then please, our tech masters will post the link to connect with Ben in his LinkedIn link, where you can send him a message, share your takeaway, connect with him. And of course, attendees, if you would like to connect with everyone else here in Loop, let's flood the chat right now. We're going to climb a mountain together. Post your own LinkedIn in the chat and we can all connect with everyone. Ben, I want you to connect individually with all 254 people. You're going to stay on here for the rest of the 12 hours live, right? Amazing. Well, Ben, feel free to head off and just thank you so much. That has been absolutely awesome. And